Hey everybody, it's Sam Colbert from Forward Observer. We just finished up yesterday with a Tech Intel course, and it's a really good time. I love teaching about disaster intelligence and how to use intelligence for emergency preparedness and community security. I'm running these new classes through my new training company, which is called Gray Zone Activity. And one of the reasons why I named it Gray Zone is because I think the United States in a number of years is going to be increasingly referred to as a gray zone by people who understand what gray zones are. Typically, we think of a gray zone as, what Russia's doing in Ukraine, or what's happening in Syria, or what China is doing in the South China Sea. Basically, wearing these countries down and disrupting their security and stability to meet their geopolitical objectives. And it's not just Russia and China. The United States is a gray zone actor as well. And we're competing in gray zone environments all around the world. So don't get me wrong. I'm not just saying other countries are doing it. This is, Clausewitz said that war is politics by other means. And frankly, gray zone warfare is geopolitics by other means. Over the weekend, one of the students was a former Army psychological operations guy and was talking about a Chinese news station that was broadcasting from Mexico into the United States. I guess to an American audience in San Diego or LA or, that southwestern region of the United States. And it really underscored the point. It used to be that the only ones propagandizing Americans was, its government and the American media. And now today we're being propagandized by foreign countries as well. I really think that underscores that the United States is becoming a gray zone where foreign countries are exploiting stability and security here. When we have a legitimacy crisis in government that is going to be compounded by a coming monetary legitimacy crisis once the US dollar loses world reserve status within the next 20 years. I don't think it's going to take any longer than 20 years. That process has very likely already started. I'm virtually certain that process has already started. It's not an overnight process. It's going to be a multi-year, maybe decade-long process, but it has already started. And things in this country are going to change very rapidly. They already are, but this is going to be the case for probably the next couple of decades as we go through a low-intensity conflict, maybe go to war with China. Maybe that's a shooting war. Maybe it's an escalation in economic, financial, monetary war, what Ray Dalio calls a capital war. Actually, this is pretty interesting. Ray Dalio runs Bridgewater Associates, and he said that the United States and China are in a capital war right now, which, basically he says no money equals no power. And so both countries are trying to undermine the other's financial, economic, monetary stability. And one way that a conflict with China could escalate will escalate is in terms of capital, money, finance, economics, eroding each other's global competitiveness, eroding each other's currency, stability, and security. This is gray zone warfare. This is another reason why I called my company Gray Zone Activity, because we are seeing gray zone activities inside the United States. And what I want to teach people, especially communities, is how to use intelligence, how to understand intelligence, apply it at a local level for emergency preparedness and community security. I've taught several iterations of this one-day disaster intelligence class, and I think I'm going to start teaching a lot more of those, especially because hurricane season's coming up. And but ultimately, we're going to have much larger problems than hurricanes. And my message to everyone is you have to understand intelligence, because you don't have to be an Intel pro, you don't have to be an Intel officer, but you have to understand what intelligence value is, and you have to understand that everyone is a sensor. Every single person in your preparedness group, in your community, at your work, at your civic club, whatever, right? In the Army, we said every soldier is a sensor. Every member of your community is a sensor as well. And it is incumbent on them, whether they realize it or not, most don't realize it, it is incumbent on them to, at a minimum, passively monitor their local areas, passively gather local information of intelligence value. And the more sensors we have out there collecting stuff about local threats, about local conditions, about, some years from now, once everybody realizes that the dollar is doomed, the next logical question is, okay, how does this affect me? How is this going to affect my community? And so, monitoring your local operating environment, monitoring local conditions, ideally looking for indicators like, hey, this company's about to go out of business and they employ 1,500 people in this county. And now these 1,500 people are going to be out of work, right? What does that do to your community? And I mean, that's just an example I pulled off the top of my head, but we're going to see like massive changes come to this country over the next 20 years. And intelligence reduces uncertainty about the future. So the more sensors that I have and the more I know about intelligence analysis, the better I can put together the puzzle, the better that I can anticipate future conditions. And if I may not know exactly what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, in intelligence, you rarely know exactly what's going to happen. But if I can start to put together the puzzle, start to put together these indicators and say, hey, these are some things that I think could happen in the future. Guess what? We can start preparing for those things very specifically. We can be deliberate about how we prepare. One thing that I hate to beat a dead horse, but I hear people all the time, preparing for an EMP or societal collapse or whatever, right? Grid down. Well, you got to be preparing for the follow-on effects of that, the second and third order effects, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth order effects of that event, because we have to understand how this impacts us locally. And the real problem that we have as Americans is we don't just have to be concerned about natural disasters. Increasingly, we are going to be affected by geopolitical conditions, by economic wars, financial, monetary, capital wars. We are all going to be affected by this. Cyber attacks, that's increasingly becoming and I say increasingly, but cyber attacks, it's been around for such a long time, but it's a tool of choice for a lot of foreign countries who are trying to basically attack the United States. Because what are we going to do in response? We're going to flip Russia's power off? That's like a Tuesday in Russia. We are going to be way more affected by a loss of power than Russia will. And so the point of all, and I forgot if I said this the other day, but, I'm going back and reading this Chinese book called Unrestricted Warfare that was written by two Chinese PLA colonels back in 1999. And they said the way you beat America is you make them prioritize their self-preservation above their geopolitical interests. And I know one guy in the comments earlier said, the United States is not going to war with China. Well, China's been at war with the United States for over 20 years. Historically, monetary wars, currency wars lead to shooting wars, historically. So the United States may not go to war militarily with China, but history says that we will. We are going to be affected by Chinese information operations. We're going to be affected by geopolitics, by nameless, faceless people who are trying to manipulate us. It's already happening. It's no longer the American media doing this to you. It's foreign media as well. This is why understanding gray zone activity is so crucial, why it's going to become more important. And my message is, if you haven't already pulled the trigger, I have tons of videos on this channel talking about intelligence. Here's how you use intelligence on a local level to prepare for local emergencies, to bolster community security, threat analysis, early warning. I break it all down, and I think the video series is called How an Intelligence Analyst Prepares for SHTF. Go back and watch those videos, because I break down this process step by step by step by step. And if you do want to come to a future training, a tactical intelligence course, a disaster intelligence course, I'll be running a security and a tradecraft course, actually several security and tradecraft courses later this year. Head over to www.grayzoneactivity.com and check out my training schedule. I'm just about to add another 3 or 4 courses. So that does it for this video. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be well and stay out front.